July 4th, but at least there has to be a commitment for the imminent end of segregation and discrimination in their places of accommodation.
It should be also said, to buttress what Jim has just indicated, that this is why the power structure wants to contain it, because granting to the Negro full emancipation means a readjustment of the entire economy of the United States, the financial economy and the political economy. Once the Negro is given that, then America has to change its entire posture. I think it's inevitable move toward some kind of socialism of a sort.
Mr. Walker, are you saying, and I would like to ask you, the rest of you gentlemen, this question, are you saying, therefore, that you do not believe that President Kennedy and the present administration mean what it is they say? Let's forget the question of tactics or delay or whether this should have come 3 years ago or what. But are you saying, when you refer to the power structure and you're talking about a fear of something akin to socialism, a thorough changing of our economic and political structure, are you saying that this administration and all of those political leaders who have stood through the years for the fight that you are waging, are you saying that they don't mean what they say?
I think it's well-intentioned, but when I look at it realistically as a Negro living in the Deep South, I do not see that this is sufficient to bring about what needs to be done immediately. I don't think legislation alone can do it. And I do believe that...
How can you believe it's well-intentioned, then?
Well, I'm charitable enough to believe it's well-intentioned. I don't think it's realistic.
That's why we're still in the condition that we're in. Our leaders are too charitable toward those politicians who have been using flowery words but not coming up with deeds that will be equal to those words.
Sir, I think the real question is not whether they mean it, but what they do about it, whether they can pull it off. Because we've heard good words for hundreds of years now, and they haven't come off.
Yes.
Now, maybe they've meant it. I don't know. I can't look into a man's mind and read his mind. I'm not a mind reader. But what I know is that those words have not been backed up by deeds. So we will have to judge the administration. We'll have to judge its good intentions by what it does, not by what it says.
But of course it all comes back to Mr. Morrison's statement about power structure, and this is why I keep not beating a dead horse, because it's hardly dead. Coming back to the question of whether you feel that basically the power structure, however one might define that in this country, is basically opposed to the Negro's search for equality. This, it seems to me, is such a basic question, and such a basic question that we ought to take a break for a moment and come back to it in just a moment. Mr. Walker, you wanted to say something about
Yes,
that.
I want to take strong exception to the President's suggestion that it's better to move the struggle of the Negro for full emancipation out of the streets back into the courts. And I take the inference as meaning that it's dangerous for the battle to be waged in the streets. But I think in the wise of our American heritage that I don't want anyone or the public to think that our means of fighting for equality in the streets is an illegitimate method. It's a part of the American tradition. And I do not want it thought that because it is dangerous, that it should be taken from us as a methodology to secure full emancipation now.
May I just say, as an historian, my reading of what the President said on Tuesday night is not that there is something wrong with what goes on in the streets, but that he himself, as an historian, knows that this is the way so much has been accomplished in our own history, but rather is saying that that has been the prelude to the writing into our governmental structure, through our legislatures, through our executive branch, of more fundamental reforms. I don't think that he is saying that there is something illegitimate about what happens in the street, in the actions that you gentlemen are responsible for. I don't think that at all. This is my own reading of it, but rather that he is seeking now to make firmer within the context of this total American structure what has been stirred up by the actions in the street.
But when he says it's better, fortunately, or I guess unfortunately, John Kennedy has never been a Negro, and I can't wait to go through the courts, because I've seen 100 years of that, and it's city by city and county by county and specific instance by specific instance. And that's why the courts alone will not do it, and I can't buy that it's better to move it from the streets into the courts. What this nation must face is that we have a legitimate right under the First Amendment guarantees of the Bill of Rights to peacefully demonstrate, and this is what the nonviolent revolution is directed at. And this is why we insist upon it. as a means of, if you will, creating a crisis so severe that the government, the federal administration, has to grapple with it and do something immediately.
But it seems to me that what President Kennedy is saying